Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us once again, the founder and proprietor of TradersChoice.net, one of our reoccurring guests, one of my favorite and one of yours too, Gregory Mannarino, joining us from Las Vegas, Nevada. Greg Mannarino, lots to talk about today. Thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Greg, thanks for having me back. I really enjoy this very much. Thank you.
You know, one of the themes, good to have you on too, and I just wanted to kind of use some real news pegs to back up some of the things you've been saying as your theme. One of your themes is they can't let this go down. They can't let this go down. Hugh Hendry, famous money manager, has been out in recent interviews. You've seen him on Zero Hedge, whatever, and he says, they can't let this go down. Central banks, you can't even play any kind of fundamentals. You just have to kind of play that unit that the central banks are not going to let this go down. You've got S&P futures, a trader in S&P futures, a 20-year veteran. This is on Zero Hedge, saying that no 100% sure of the central banks, including the Fed, buying S&P futures to prop up the market. You have commodities manipulation, which is to, I guess, prop up the market. You have in Congress, we have hearings in Congress about how the big banks are moving, for example, aluminum around from one storehouse facility to another to jack the price up, and all kinds of other stuff. You've got fines being paid by banks overseas for manipulating the gold market, which we were told a few years ago that it was tinfoil hat stuff. And this all plays into one of your big themes is they can't let this go down. And so where are we in the arc here of, it's pretty well documented with the fines for laundering money, for rate rigging, for commodities rigging, for Forex rigging, for you name the rigging, and we have it in the global economy, and the United States is leading the way. Where are we in the arc here when we have this much manipulation? We have top money managers saying you can't use fundamentals. You just got to play the central banks.
Mm-hmm. Well, Greg, I really think that we can see what's happening all around the world, and the actions that you're speaking about and what the central banks are doing. It's clear to me that they are absolutely desperate right now. And that also means that we must be very, very close to a major event here. Again, I don't believe, at least at this point, that we've seen the actual end, because the central banks are going to continue to do everything that you just talked about, plus more. They're going to do things that we can't even conceive yet. Those that think of us that think about all of this all the time, you're included, me included, a lot of people. They're going to pull surprises that are going to shock people. And one of them, Greg, is what Obama just did with regard to the immigration reform. Again, this is a dollar propping up mechanism. That's all it is. People need to understand, and this is, I think, the issue why people don't understand a lot of very serious concepts, and it comes back to the debt-based economic model, which I've spoken about at length for years now. The mechanism requires, and absolutely requires, that they come up with more and more reasons to borrow cash into existence. It's a debt-based economic model. So all the things you're talking about, all the propping up mechanisms, all the actions of the central bank are about propping this up at this point, because we have to be near the end here. It's that's how desperate they are. Look at what the Bank of Japan just did. What is this, QE5 or 6? I don't even know what it is. Once the central bank embarks on this, like the Federal Reserve has, and they're still continuing this QE through a backdoor mechanism, which we've spoken about, I've talked about at length many times here so far. But again, this all goes back to the premise that it can't stop. This whole mechanism of borrowing cash into existence is so dastardly and so pervasive. And it all comes down to, honestly, the population issue. It's a resource issue, Greg. This isn't a financial problem. So that's why they're so desperate to keep this propped up. Because once this comes down, Greg, and people need to understand this, we have a human bubble. We've spoken about this before.
Your very first interview.
Yeah,
your very first interview.
Yeah, we're gonna see a loss of life, Greg, when this debt bubble bursts. I mean, this has been my premise from day one too, that it's gonna, I'm not really a religious guy. I know a lot of people, take offense to that, but it is what it is. But I look at things from a scientific standpoint, and what we understand is the this hyperinflated debt issue has allowed an alternative universe and has carried the human race with it and created an environment where resources will at one point become scarce. It's going to wipe out, Greg, a large portion of the human race when the debt bubble bursts. And that's why we're seeing all the desperation, all the twisting of everything, the manipulation of metals, manipulation of currencies, central banks that are going to do everything they can to prop this up. World leaders, they're going to do things we can't even conceive yet. For example, this immigration thing is a dollar propping up mechanism, just like the expansion of wars is. That's how desperate they are, Greg, and it's going to get much worse.
Well, let's talk about the one of the most recent things, and I couldn't believe I was reading this just yesterday. I mean, today's Monday, but they're talking about how that China has set up a yuan swap facility. They've set up a facility for the city of Los Angeles. I mean, they just did one in Canada. They have one in almost every major industrialized country now, Germany and the UK and in Brazil, and I guess all the BRICS countries are all set up. It's just a lot of the Asian countries are all set up for yuan swap facilities. But this one, how can you deny that the yuan facility is set up in Los Angeles for the city of Los Angeles? I mean, what does that tell you?
Dude, it tells me what we all know. All of us, I guarantee you, who are watching this right now, they get it. The U.S. dollar, Greg, is in a terminal phase, and I've been going over this for a very, very long time. I don't care what the dollar strength is recently with regard to the other currencies out there. We have countries, specifically China, specifically Russia, who are betting against the debt, just like in the U.S. dollar, just like I've been saying to everyone to do for years now. And how do we know they're doing this, Greg? Because they're acquiring huge amounts of gold with these suppressed prices. Believe me, they're taking advantage of this. That's what people need to do as well. Bet against the debt, become your own central bank. The China and Russia are and have been for I don't know how many years now, angling themselves against the corruption or against it's so deep. The whole issue with the central bank, the Federal Reserve here, the U.S. dollar, and they understand where this is all going. Again, the U.S. dollar is a dying currency. It is in a terminal phase. Russia understands this. China understands this. The only people that don't understand it, Greg, are the zombified American populace for the most part. It's very, very sad. That's why shows like this are just so important. And I'm afraid, and you and I just spoke about this, that we're going to start to see more and more people like us become censored. And they're not going to, the mainstream media, they need to keep that narrative going, and they're going to do things again, because this is how desperate they are, Greg, to squash people like you and me from getting the message out there.
Well, speaking of which, you were telling me in the pre-interview here today that you've had a couple of different videos talking about why they did this, why Obama did this immigration, this massive immigration where they legalized basically or temporarily legalized 5 million, illegal immigrants. And you're saying, well, it's because to prop up the dollar. It's really dollar motivated. In your analysis, it's a dollar motivated. And they wouldn't put that video on. You could upload it, but they would not put that video. It's under review. They wouldn't put it out for whatever reason. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my last two videos, as a matter of fact, on my market report, which I do on YouTube, they've allowed me to upload the video, and they're holding them in an under review pattern. They've done this for days now. I've tried over and over again to get in contact with them with no reply. So I feel sincerely that, I'm not the first guy this has happened to, but that I am being censored, at least at this point here. I'm trying to resolve the issues. Look, guys like you and me and a lot of the people out here who challenge the mainstream media's perspective, I think we're all at risk here. And if people don't say something, if they don't get involved and start opening their mouths, and again, this is part of what is going on. They need to keep people dumbed down and not aware of what really is going on behind the guys. Because that's all this is. It's a facade. Everything is fake across the board, including the equity markets and everything else that's going on here. Talking about fundamentals don't matter anymore, something I've been talking about for many, many years. We have an equity market that continues to move higher and higher and higher despite what the fundamentals are dictating. That is a bubble, a bubble. When any asset rises above a level that the fundamentals dictate, you have a bubble. and the U.S. equity market is in a bubble following the debt bubble, and the price to pay for this, Greg, when this comes down is going to be epic. And we're not just talking about a financial issue, I'm talking about a human life issue, and that's why I think this is just so important for people to understand. You know, let me just touch on something else real quick, because this is one of the videos that I got censored recently. I was talking about this hyperinflation thing. A lot of people said, hey, you know, all these people who talk about hyperinflation and massive inflation, they were all wrong because it hasn't happened yet. There's a reason for that, Greg. And what I want people to understand, and anyone can look this up, there is a lag effect, and we've seen this throughout history. When a central bank goes on a money printing binge like this, it takes a while for all of those extra printed dollars to make their way over to the consumer side of the monetary base. The reason why we're not seeing that right now is because we are at historic lows regarding the money velocity. Something I talk about all the time. The money velocity is the rate at which cash is moving through an economy. Once we begin to see, I want people to ponder this, once we begin to see that money velocity start to kick up, we're going to have the $3.3 plus trillion that the Federal Reserve has printed out of thin air, status post to crash through 2008. All of those extra bills are going to start chasing the same amount of goods. You do not need to be a rocket scientist to figure out how this is going to play out. And in my book, The Politics of Money, I say at the end stage, you are going to see deflation first, and then massive inflation. That plays exactly into what's going on here at this time, Greg. So again, once we see this money velocity start to pick up, think about it. All of those extra bills, those $3.3 trillion, the Federal Reserve has expanded their balance sheet from $850 billion to $4.4 plus trillion.
And that's what they claim. That's what they claim.
Yeah, that's what they claim. It's probably higher. I've heard estimates of $6 trillion. But think about it. No matter how it plays out, all of these extra bills are going to chase the same amount of goods. And again, you do not need to be, you know, some kind of brainiac to figure out where that's going to go. So the hyperinflation thing, Greg, is absolutely true, absolutely real, and will more than likely play out once we see that money velocity pick up. Right now, since it's at historic lows, it doesn't matter. It's not going to stay like that because we know a few other things. The U.S. dollar is losing its reserve status. The U.S. dollar countries are backing away from this. This is common knowledge. Look at what China's doing with their, you know, establishing the yuan in Canada and everywhere else. They understand.
In LA, the city of LA, who is doing the budgetary, who's doing the budgets in LA to think, I think we ought to be able to trade yuan and dollars here in Los Angeles. Who's doing that? You didn't hear a peep about that. You didn't hear it. That wasn't in the mainstream media, and most people don't understand what that means.
They don't, but because they need to keep people in this state, where they think the dollar is king, is always going to be king. Really, people need to understand that the U.S. dollar is on borrowed time, at least at this particular moment in history. And I think there's going to be a terrible price to pay for all this, Greg, when all those trillions start making their way over to the consumer side of the monetary base, like I spoke about. Watch for hyperinflation because it is a very real possibility.
So are we getting deflation right now? Is that what we're getting right now? Are we getting deflation? Is the oil, Jerry Salenti says, you know, listen, the economic business is just, you know, tanking, and you're seeing the, you know, oil, you know, in terms of consumption tanking. He says that's real. Is that the deflation you're talking about?
Well, the deflation in commodities that we have seen lately, I'm talking about precious metals as well, though we're seeing a little bit of a bounce here. Remember, we talked about this, I told you. But a lot of the pressure on oil right now is because of what I believe is the sanctions that are going on against Russia and the black market with ISIS. And there's a lot of factors going on here. The United States is trying to punish Russia through this mechanism here. This is not going to last either, in my opinion. The OPEC nations are not happy about it, and they're going to take some kind of action at one particular time. So don't let anyone get used to this, because this is not the new norm. We will see, again, people need to understand here, we have a supply and demand issue of epic proportions regarding these printed U.S. dollars, Greg, and they're going to make their way over to the consumer side of the monetary base, and we are going to see inflation, and it's going to be scary. It has the potential to cause hyperinflation.
What does that look like to the guy on the street? I know I asked this question to a lot of people because a lot of people listening is going, hey, it's going to be scary, it's going to be this. What does it look like to the guy on the street? How are you preparing for it? What does it look like to the guy on the street? What are you doing to prepare for this scary situation?
Well, the guy on the street just needs to understand this simple mechanism: supply and demand versus the U.S. dollar. All of these extra dollars will make their way over here to the consumer side of the monetary base when the money velocity picks up. The reason why the money velocity is flatlining now is because the economy is dead. We have a dead economy. Anyway, so you need to be betting against that debt. Very simple.
That's your deflation you're talking about, the dead economy.
Well, yeah, that's part of it as well.
Deflation.
There's no demand here. There's no demand at this particular point. And it creates a vicious cycle here. When people believe prices are going to keep falling, they don't buy. They wait for it to go lower. That's why the Federal Reserve, all the central banks, fear deflation. And they won't allow this to happen. They're going to start printing again. And the Federal Reserve is already setting up for this. They've been talking about it on the mainstream media, the financial channels, how they're fearing deflation. We've been hearing it all over the place. We hear the European Central Bank. They're broadcasting this. They're broadcasting another round of the massive money printing, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's the largest of them all. Again, it's a prop-up mechanism, Greg, and we're going to see the expansion of wars. We are going to see other things be pulled out of a hat by the administrations around the world to keep the system propped up. The debt-based economic model, Greg, is in its last leg as far as I'm concerned, and there's going to be a move to a new system. It's already in the works, I am sure of it.
War with Iran. I mean, we're trying to get them to curtail their nuclear program. We're going to get yet another extension of the deadline. We've gotten another extension of the deadline, and now we're hearing that Israel is mulling a strike against Iran. Is that part of the expansion of wars you're talking about? Is ISIS, is the Ukraine, or all the above?
All of the above, Greg. It's unbelievable. We are set, and I'm not just the only one out here saying this. I think you even had Jared Salente out here talking about, this is going to, in fact, our last interview, I believe, we talked about how this is leading to global war. This is it. This is the easiest mechanism to prop this up, is to propagate war. It's the premier dollar propping up mechanism. And they are going to do this, Greg. They're going to grease the wheels of the system with the blood of all of us and our sons and our daughters. This is where this is going. And at all costs, this is what they're going to do.
Oof. Catherine Austin-Fitz has told me in the I said, we're going to have the hyperinflation, or what are we going to have first? Hyperinflation, or what? He said, I think we'll have war before, or a crash. And she said, I think we'll have war before we have anything. I guess you are, I'm trying to put together the pieces of the people who are saying the same things in a different way, but saying the same things. That's what you're saying, that they won't, before it crashes, we'll have war?
Oh, we already have war, and we have expansions of war. We just found out that Obama is extending the military operations in Afghanistan. This is just the beginning. It's going to get much worse. They're going to wait for this to reach a fever pitch, just what we did with ISIS. They waited for the public beheadings. They showed this on the mainstream media. Look how evil these people are. They're beheading everyone. We better do something. They get the public to back it by seeing these horrific things, and then they push it down your throat, and then people back it. This is going to get much worse. We're going to see this to hit a new level at one particular point. Again, why? To prop up the dollar.
You have, I want to, in closing here, talk about your channel. I mean, you've gone to a paid-for only channel, and I'm sorry that your videos are under review, and I hope they get unlocked soon. You went to a paid-for channel, and you have subscribers now. Explain that. What are you doing? Why? And how do you become a subscriber?
People, they get a free trial here for 2 weeks. I decided to change the format of my channel because, Greg, I was getting killed with, and I think it was being done on purpose, with trolling and people trying to cause a problem in my channel. And now that I've gone to this platform, there's no trolls anymore. It's an environment now where like-minded people can get together and hear the real issues, what's happening here. But look what they're doing to me now. Now they're trying to shut down my channel. It's insane. It's obviously clear to me that this is being done on purpose. And I fear that channels like yours are going to suffer as well, right? Because it's not just me. A lot of other people have had the same issue here. I'm hoping to resolve this very soon, at least by this week. If something doesn't occur this week, then I guess they've effectively killed my channel here. I'll find other ways to get the truth out there. There's no doubt about it. Maybe through this mechanism with you as well, Greg.
How much does that? Yeah, I know it's you've only had it up for a month or two, and you've got hundreds of subscribers, and it's not very much. It's what, $49 a year. I'm not trying to sell your thing.
Yeah.
You have no agreement with me for me to do this, but I know a lot of people have asked about you, and some people are angry. Don't be like the other Greg to me and go subscription. You give out valuable information. I mean, you can't just get everything for free on the internet. But what is your subscription cost? How do you sign up?
Sure. You just find me on YouTube. You'll find my site there. You put in Gregory Mannarino. You'll find me. I'm everywhere. You know that. It's pretty easy. If you do decide to sign up there, you do get a 2-week free trial. And what makes my channel different here is, and specifically now what I've decided to do is I discuss the specifics of my trades, my entry and exit points, what I'm buying, when I'm buying it, everything. And people have been making money through this mechanism. So this $49 a year will pay for itself multiple fold for those people that are getting involved here.
And last question, how close are we? Can you handicap what kind of a time window we are when things start, either we get war or we get a crash? I don't know which we get first. I mean, is that what you're saying? We either get a crash based on hyperinflation, a crash in the dollar and the treasury market, or we get all-out global war, and maybe we get the crash after that. What is it? What's the order? What's the time frame?
Well, Greg, I think this has been an issue for people like myself and Peter Schiff. It's very difficult to nail this down because I don't think any one of us, and I admit this for myself, really understood the lengths that the world central banks were going to go through to prop this up. If it were not for their actions, which are beyond belief, really, this would have went down a long time ago. And the problem is this: whenever this decides to happen, all they're doing, Greg, is creating a financial monster unlike anything that's ever been seen in the history of the world. And that's because they're hyperinflating this debt issue, which is hyperinflating everything else by the suppression of interest rates. We've seen speculation in this market, the likes of which we've literally never seen before. We have a margin debt at historic highs, higher than in the last crash. So you can rest assured that when this all comes down, it's going to make the 2008 crash literally look like a walk in the park.
Gregory Mannarino, traderschoice.net. You'll send me a link for your sign-up page. I'll put it on after the thing, and people get a free 2-week trial. Gregory Mannarino, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Great to be here, Greg. Thank you.